Good morning, friends, all over the world. My new friend Steve, the world of Steves. My new friend Steve in the UK, which I don't know if that means in. Okay, I'm going to start over again because I don't like that light where it is. Maybe I won't. This is live. I mean, once you watch it, it's not even work, but it's live right now. And I'm alive and I'm feeling much more alive consistently. So I think I was saying about Steve in the UK, is it UK Scotland? Maybe I'll have to ask him. Or is it UK England? Or is it UK Wales? Or is it UK Northern Ireland? I know Southern Ireland's not part of the United Kingdom, nor who knows if any of the states perceive themselves as part of the United States, or if all the states in this particular country think of themselves as, or are thinking of themselves, beginning to think of themselves as, we are better off when we were rogue. Yeah. Yeah, I'm just going to talk a bit today, because some of the people that I'm becoming really close with through um, through the internet are people who kind of want to know what's going on with people in other parts of the world. So, um, and I think that what's going on with people in many parts of the world has to do with accommodating change. And so I would just suggest that you go to YouTube. You're on YouTube, so. But go to YouTube and type in. I'm glad I took my memory mushrooms this morning in my honey, lemon, vinegar, hot drink, which is supposed to help cleanse and renew my immune system, which has been working very well, but kind of over time it seems. And maybe many people's immune systems seem to be working overtime. And basically, one of the things that is a thought form, but may have some reality based on a lot of people, and it may just be a thought form, but is that the immune system is function is lowered by exhaustion of the adrenal glands, which the adrenal glands participate chemically in the experience of fight or flight. So there's fight, there's flight, and freeze, and there may be some others, I mean, those are the ones that are made up in terms of the belief and the thought form, which thought forms control all of our lives. The ones we believe in. We believe in Democrats, then the thought forms is, oh good, Kamala's going to do great. And if our thought forms are maybe currently Republican, and the thing is like, oh man, if we give the Democrats another 4 years, the country will collapse. Who knows if it doesn't need to? I don't know. I've been doing this thing since yesterday, where I came across on YouTube, and I try to spend this amount of time on YouTube when I'm actually interacting with people on YouTube. Like, I put out this content and you read or listen to this content and you respond to this content in a comment. So it's a comment on content. which may connect us in a bit, may give me a sense of you, and this may give you a sense of me. And so there's this interaction taking place between us. And so I just, as many people say to me, I don't know how you appeared on my sidebar. But how we all appear on sidebars is there's this AI. And so I really need to get more consistent with my memory mushrooms. What does AI even mean? Accumulated intelligence report. Anyway, they're trying to determine exactly who you are by watching yourself. So there's a camera on you from your computer that's watching what you're doing, and I just imagine there's a camera on your computer that's watching you all the time, as well as listening to you, and on your phone. So this is aggregate AI, aggregate intelligence, which is the idea is if we can just nail this person down, we can sell them something. That to me is what. And so I was sold. I was sold on this music. So I have not been listening to music much over the last number of years. I just have kind of stepped away from my interest in various forms of music. But I had this person show up, a young person, and I'm guessing they're in their 20s. 2007, so it's almost 20 years. Yeah, it's almost 20 years that he's been a YouTube influencer, content producer, related to music, and he started, I think, at 13 playing music, and maybe it was between 13 and 15 he started producing music in 2007. So 30. Let's just say he's approximately 30. It might be 30 something. But he's like one of the old hands in the content producing music thing. And he has done a lot of work with cover songs. And his name's Joshua Lee Turner. And I mention it because he's done cover songs of some of my favorite songs from back in the day. And for me, the day was, well, my older brothers were listening to Donovan and Bob Dylan and Peter, Paul and Mary and Gordon Lightfoot, various people in the 50s maybe. And then the 60s was a period of time where I had more interest in music. The Fab Four and that. This person does cover songs from a number of decades, and he does them well. So you can look him up. But I just got caught in this loop of that was really good, that was really good, that was really good, that was really good. He plays with all these different people. And I like him as a human being. I like his energy as a human being. I like his interaction with others. And he just represents the best of this generation that's arising in their 30s. And I can remember what I was doing arising in my 30s. I got out of chiropractic college at 29. I was establishing myself in a practice in 1980 in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I was in love with what I was doing, and I was loving the opportunity of being able to offer it to others and have them actually change. In terms of what I was offering, they were changing, and they were telling their friends, and their friends were telling their friends, and they're bringing in family members. So my practice just grew and grew and grew and grew. I did one advertisement in the local kind of more alternative it was a paper magazine, The Observer. And I put one ad in The Observer in 1980, just letting people know what I was up to. And out of that, I never did another advertisement. Out of that, the people began to come, and then they began to get better, and then they began to bring their friends, family, relatives, on and on and on, and then that just continued to happen. And for me, it was about keeping a balance between my life in terms of interacting with others in my office and my home life and my teaching life. So I was teaching, working, parenting, gardening, remodeling houses. I had a lot of energy. And I had a lot of energy to a point. And the last year, I haven't had that energy. So really, you have seen me, those of you who have seen me over the last 7 months, have seen me on some levels at a low point energetically. I may have had the appearance of having some energy through the video, but I initiated a detoxing process 15 months ago, and it went along 3 months just fine. You know, I could tell things were happening. And then all of a sudden, I felt sick. And then my body just started to detox. And so August, September, October, November, and December, I thought I was going to be done after 4 months, November. Then it was December, it was January. It just kept going. And I was realizing something really good was happening. Things were getting out of my body that allowed my body to function at a higher level. And so I just continued to do the process. I continued to work with it in a variety of ways. Different things would happen. And the most recent thing was my eustachian tube, the drainage tube that drains from your middle ear down into your back of your throat, and changes pressure. So if there's too much pressure, you're on an airplane, things change, it can release that pressure through the eustachian tube. If there's some type of fluid buildup or allergies, it can release that fluid. If there is something that pulls mucus or whatever up into the eustachian tube, it can get blocked. And there's probably other reasons for it to get blocked. But inflammation, sinusitis, allergies, all those things can tend to block the eustachian tube, and then it can't change the pressure. Then it can fill up with fluids, and then you lose your hearing. So that all happened. And I understood. In my chiropractic practice, I did a lot of cranial work, so I understand how to open the eustachian tube and what cranial bones and all that stuff. And I did all these things, and nothing. It just was there. And I thought, I'll go to a chiropractor. It's just not a bad idea. So went to a chiropractor. He did all sorts of really good things. All sorts of other things changed that needed to change, and they did change, and I felt different. But this, so. And then I had a thought form, a belief, something I'd made up from my experiences. So it might have we could call it my experience, but if you believe it, then it's a thought form from my experience, because you can only really know from your experience. But I had this belief made up from my experience as a chiropractor that the ears the eyes, the sinuses, the mouth, the throat, and lungs, and testes, and ovaries, knees, and elbows were all related to grief and loss. And I'd say for the past 3 months, my sessions with clients over the phone have had to do with grief and loss. There's a lot of people that are leaving the planet right now. Who knows why? We can speculate. But there's a lot of people leaving right now, and a lot of people who are leaving at a younger age, in their 40s, in their teenage years. Like there's for whatever reason, there seems to be like a lot of cancers in children. We can speculate, but again, it's happened. I don't know, when I was a child, it was rare that you heard of some. Maybe you just didn't hear of it because we didn't have the internet. I associated ears with primarily grief and loss. I knew there was also a relationship with things going on in the ears based on things going on with the jaw, which affects the ears, and the jaw is related to fight or flight. You know, you can just make those physical expressions. I can just go into grief, come out of it. I can go into fear, come out of it. And we can all be taken into fear, taken into grief, taken into anger by external triggerings. The powers that be understand this process. It's been studied for a long time. If you want to control the population, you can do it through fear. And there's one thought that if you want to shift population's perception of reality, you can make them very fearful, give them a boogeyman, give them something to fear, make them very fearful about that thing you've given them to fear, and then give them the solution your way that you would eliminate this thing you've given them to be afraid of. Monkeypox, whatever, you know. But this has been a process that's gone on a long time. And there's all sorts of thought forms that have been formed. There's a matrix of thought forms. There's a matrix of Democrats, Republicans, independents, whoever else, communists, socialists, fascists, thought forms. Then there's you. And is it a thought form that you're a sovereign being of light? Could be a thought form. It is a thought form if you haven't experienced it. If you haven't experienced an awareness of your sovereignty, if you haven't had awareness of your state of being, and if you haven't had experiences of your light, just coming in, coming out. We can look at people and we can say, oh, that's a being of light, because they're bringing the light. Some people can see the aura around the body. Some people can tell you what the person's color of aura is. Might be a closer color, might be a wider color, there's a different color. And there's books written about what's the color of your aura. And people say these are extrasensory perceptions. Colored light around the body, auras. People say these are extrasensory perceptions. But one could say, well, they're just sensory perceptions. They're things that people are perceiving through their senses. And people say, well, there's only 5 senses. I'm not even going to put myself under pressure to name them, but there's sight, sound, taste, feeling, whatever else. But there's levels of perception, and maybe it's defined as extrasensory perception because there's levels of perception. And if you want to develop higher levels of perception, because I've been working on this as long as I can remember, but a very good workbook might be the book Attuned. Just happen to have it right here. Book Attuned by Thomas Hübl. Practicing Interdependence to Heal Our Trauma and Our World. And I won't, they say a spoiler alert. I won't tell you, I've read the book to you, I think 9 times or something. I have 9 videos from the book Attuned. But I stopped doing it because I was feeling like I was getting into this repetitive process where I was just like, oh, I'm going to do a Mayan calendar reading. Oh, I'm going to do a tarot card reading. Oh, I'm going to read from the book Attuned. Oh, I'm going to set up a healing field. So that was, or I'm just going to, like today, just yammer on. So, getting back to the year, I had an intuition. I had a thought, just showed up in my head. It wasn't something I thought out and came to a conclusion. It just came up that it would help the blockage in my ear if I ate onion. And I hadn't eaten onion except maybe if it was in something I ate out, but my co-housing unit, my significant other, has a very aware nose. And there are certain smells that, let's say, are not as appreciated as much as others. So those might be bananas, which I think there's an actual possibly allergy to, peanut butter, that the person could actually eat and does eat on occasion, but doesn't necessarily want to smell it in the morning. And onions. Onions just are a big one. But I had this intuition that it would help open up my ear if I ate onions. So I went ahead and I did. And I actually cooked them a little bit and ate them in a vegetable scramble, onions, vegetables, and some eggs. And as I was eating that breakfast scramble, I was using my jaw, but I'd used my jaw for the previous 3 weeks and it hadn't done that much. And so I was eating these, and all of a sudden I heard this cracking sound, like, and all of a sudden I just felt my ear open up. I thought, interesting. I had intuition to eat onions. I ate onions. My ear opened. That to me is not a thought form necessarily. That's an experience which is different than a thought form. Oftentimes we'll have the experience of the thought form we have, but when we just have an experience, we can create a thought form. Oh, I had an intuition to eat onions. I ate onions. My ear opened up. There's a relationship. And there may be no relationship. It may be that my ear just at that moment had decided to open up. I happen to be eating onions. So all of those things are just thoughts that active minds, when they are active and when they're functional, which is when the toxicity level is lower in the body, the mind tends to be functioning higher. That's my experience, and then it's also thought form. So thought forms experience. Beliefs. Believing is seeing. So if you believe something, that's the way you'll perceive it. And a belief is based on, there's one story from my dream school teachers that explained to me in the dream school, and then I wrote it down the next day when I was in the awake school. And I wrote down that there's 3 ways to change, one of them being beliefs, and then beliefs, behaviors, and boundaries, and that beliefs are basically stories with a lot of emotions that keep us separate from the energy of trauma. So when we have a trauma, we make up a story about the trauma it's only a trauma when there's a lot of energy left in it. And once that energy is released from the trauma, then it's just a story. And once it's a story without energy, then we just quit telling it. We keep telling the stories that keep having energy. We don't lose the energy of a story just because we repeat it 1,000,000 times. It still doesn't release it. It releases it when we release the energy underneath it of the trauma. So, you would think that over the last 3 months, with all the clients that I was working with, who are almost all of them dealing with grief and loss, there seems to be themes of the emotions. There's always grief and loss, fight or flight, and anger. Those are the 3 main things, but there's other things like resentment, which is anger held in a different place. But you would think with 3 months of doing sessions with clients related to grief that my ear would release. But it didn't. It just seemed to be like holding this deep level of grief that finally, through the book Attuned, and through the book teaching me how to go to deeper levels with clients, I went to a deeper level with the client and ended up working with the actual location of the grief, which was directly inside. So if you put your fingers in your ear and you go right to the middle of your skull, that seemed to be the location of the grief where it was stuck. And where it was stuck, the base of your skull is your occiput. These bones right in here that you might have referred to as your temple, but those are the sphenoid bones. And those sphenoid bones are bat wings, and inside the skull, right through there is the back portion of it, and it holds your pituitary gland, which is related to fight or flight and master control over your entire endocrine system. But at the back of that sphenoid and the front of the occiput, which is just right under your ear, is the sphenobasilar mechanism, which is a joint. Now, why would the head have a joint unless the cranial bones moved? Which the old textbook said there's no movement in the cranial bones. And then John Upledger was participating in observing in osteopathic school a surgery where they took the top of the head off because they were doing something inside the skull, and he just watched the brain pulsing and moving. And he said, well, looks like everything's moving. And then he studied it and found out it was, which other people before him had said it was. But for some reason, people weren't ready to believe that. But when I did this session and I was working with the energetics and I felt that locking up of the sphenobasilar mechanism, all of a sudden that energy began to come out, that grief energy began to release, and that tension that was in that sphenobasilar mechanism just released. And I experienced it because that's how I work, is when I'm working with a client, I experience what is happening with them. You could say how, and I could say, well, because there's a field between us, the field of relationship, and what is going on with the client shows up in the screen of that field. So I get to see what's going on with the client. I get to feel what's going on in the client. I get to experience the shifts and changes that the client is going through while I'm energetically holding a space for them to change. So this energy released out the ears. And then my whole head changed. So that was Saturday. So Sunday, Monday, this is 2 days later. The day that energy released, I felt like my energy came back, that it had been gone for 12 months. I felt like for most of that 12 months, I was running somewhere between 40 and 50% capacity, my normal energetic level. And then, even over the past few months, it had kind of creeped up a little bit to about 70% of my capacity. But over the past month, with this ear thing, the lack of hearing, the kind of imbalance created by it, I felt like my energy had kind of dropped to somewhat of a low point again. So it had dropped pretty severely in August of last year, and it stayed very low. I was just clearing, but it stayed pretty low, got up a little higher, but just, it was like this, just steadily low. But the last couple days, my energy has been, I've had much more energy. Especially following that session where it just felt like the whole ear thing, the whole tension, it had already opened up by eating the onions, but the whole tension of it released from my head. There isn't anything I wish I had done different. There isn't anything I wish I had done sooner. It was a process that I stayed with and explored with myself, but noticed the effect when I was assisting another to release, how it impacted me when that release took place. I would just say that you can watch my videos and you can experience healing. You can work with shifting your own beliefs by noticing when you're triggered. That's when you start to notice what your beliefs are. This person, doesn't love me, all that stuff, because our energy's coming up and we're making up this whole story and we're holding this other person, this whole story, and there's this story and there's these emotions. And as soon as you're aware there's a story, there's emotions, you feel the story, you feel the emotion, and then you just stop it and go, okay, I've got the story, I got the emotions. You separate them arm's length apart, like you put the children in different rooms and just have them work it out. You get your arms length apart, and you let go of the emotions. Oftentimes you'll find yourself taking a really deep breath, and then you let go of the story, and you're free of one story. And when you're triggered, you do it again. And I wrote something that was just so beautiful in the book Attuned. I just don't think I'll necessarily be able to find it. But in the book Attuned, he quotes a woman who is a Native American woman. Her name is Joy Harjo. She is a musician, a playwright, and an author. And she was 3 years in a row was the United States Poet Laureate. And she just has this one little piece out of her book, Poet Warrior, that basically, in my perception, says the exact same thing in slightly different words that my guides taught me, this process I just taught to you again, where there's the story, there's the emotions, you separate them, release the emotions, release the story. Now listen to her words from her book. We are all here to serve each other. Let's feel that. If you get heavy with it, that's okay. That's just what you're doing with it. If you think that that's stupid, that's okay. Feel those words and notice how they affect you. If they go, oh, I like that, then that's another way to experience these words. We are all here to serve each other. At some point, we have to understand that we do not need to carry a story that is unbearable. And if you feel something, feel what you feel. If you feel your energy moving, notice that. If you feel your energy isn't moving, notice that. At some point, we have to understand that we do not need to carry a story that is unbearable. We're carrying it. First of all, recognize you're carrying it. If you're carrying it, you're carrying an unbearable story. Then, she says, then we can observe the story. Where have we heard that before? Which is mental. We can feel the story, which is physical. Let the story go, which is emotional. Then forgive the story, which is spiritual. After which we use the materials of it to build a house of knowledge. And knowledge is based on our experience, not based on thought forms of others. What we know, we know. What we believe is what someone else knew and told us based on their traumas. We can never have a world without war. That's a belief. just because it's been maybe our experience for a long time, doesn't mean that it's true for the future. We may be living in a world without war in the very near future, once enough of us wake up, are willing to face our own stories, release the trauma from which those stories came, and help others to do the same by being present with them. I'm going to just read this last little bit one more time. We are all here to serve each other. It's my pleasure to serve you. It's my pleasure to be with you. It's my pleasure to continue to heal this world that we are. We are this world. It continues to heal, to continue to heal this world until we're living in a world that's done healing. Now let's go. Have whatever kind of day you want, and if it be filled with joy and love, compassion and curiosity, could be interesting. Now let's go.